feeling about the war begun by the man they voted for in 2024. A little earlier, I spoke to three Trump voters, Mika in Washington, Nora in Florida, and Mia in Boston. They all voted for Trump in 2024, although Mia and Nora have also voted for the Democratic Party in the past. And if you're a regular listener of this program, you might remember Mika and Nora. We spoke to both of them in the first week of March, in the days after the opening of the war. At that time, Nora was against, Mika was in favor, and anything then changed. Mika first.
I am still supportive of the war. I think the war, well, I don't classify it as that, but I think this pushes the U.S. away from long-term dependence on the Middle East and more self-reliant. So I'm still in favor. There are things that has happened, like civilian casualties, that I am not in agreement with, but overall, I do believe that we are going in the right direction.
What about you, Nora?
Yeah, no, I think we're going in a terrible direction. 33 days ago when we spoke, I think we were only at a few deaths. Now we're at 13. We also have damage to our installations there. So, yeah, we are probably going to be less dependent in the Middle East because we've lost billions of dollars of equipment. We've lost billions of dollars in defense systems. So in that regard, I have less confidence. Last night, President Trump was bumbling. He wasn't clear. I don't understand what this objective is. I'm extremely disappointed. I don't even think he believes what he was saying last night. And I think he's setting it up so he can then say a year from now, well, at least we only were here for a year or two when there were other, wars or conflicts in the Middle East that lasted 10, 20 years.
Let's turn to Mia in Boston. You were a Trump voter in 2024. How do you see this war in Iran?
I see it as objectively more or less a waste of American time, money, energy, effort. The United States gets very little from the Middle East. People keep talking about Middle East reliance that doesn't exist because Donald Trump has made moves in this administration and his prior administration to ramp up our own energy production. So why should we worry about what they're doing in the Middle East when it comes to energy reliance?
Because global price rises affect everyone who buys oil.
And it absolutely does. And again, why are we hurting our allies by disproportionately doing something that affects them more than it affects us? Another reason for us to not be in the Middle East at all. It seems that we say we are allied with multiple Asian countries, multiple European countries. These are our longtime historical allies, and we are making their lives extraordinarily difficult. It just doesn't seem like the objective is matching what the administration is saying. And everybody seems to be saying different things. One day, President Trump will say something. One day, Vice President Vance will say something. Secretary Rubio will say something. Secretary Hegseth will say something. It seems that the company line really isn't a company line. And Americans are just very confused because four different people will say four different things within 48 hours of each other. So we're all very confused over here.
Well, I don't think that Americans should be confused. I understand why Americans are worried because we have had conflicts, wars, whatever you want to call them, that have lasted for 20 plus years. But I do think this is absolutely different with no troops technically on the ground. I think that we're in a better position. I think the markets are reacting to Trump saying certain things. He can get very boisterous with the bomb them back to the Stone Age. That type of rhetoric, I understand why people think the conflict is escalating. But I think Trump is being very strategic. And I think by us being a global power, we have an allegiance to actually make sure that the Strait of Hormuz isn't an issue for, our allies. And we have to make sure that Iran doesn't have any missiles, drones. So I don't foresee this being years of conflict. I foresee it, maybe at the most a year. I don't believe that it will be 2 to 3 weeks realistically, but I don't believe that this will carry on.
Well,
So my
Mika, at least
thinking-
you acknowledge that, because the last time we spoke, you thought it was going to be over in 2 to 3 weeks. And now here we are 33 days in. You're saying it's a year in. He's saying 2 to 3 weeks. We're all over the place. The markets responded. The stock futures dropped this morning. Oil prices has now surged past $100 a barrel. So I think Mia's point was proven in the sense of we're hurting our allies.
Well, but you're talking about global markets, right? And you have to remember that we're looking at this globally. We are the world's reserve currency, so everything is global that you're looking at.
So why are we doing this? I mean, it's causing nothing but frustration and hurt for everybody here. People are paying $5 for gasoline, not diesel. Diesel's almost towards $10, which is astronomical for a lot of people. All of our food is shipped through 18-wheeler trucks that rely on diesel. So regardless if we produce our own oil here, we still have to pay these extremely high prices. We are moving into spring fertilizer season. Fertilizer needs nitrogen, which primarily is imported from the Middle East. I mean, we may not feel it today, but the dominoes have fallen. The ripple effect is here, and we will see it in the growing season. Brazil has already decided they are no longer going to ramp up their production of sugar. They're going to do more something about soybeans, which is a little bit cheaper for them to produce, which will, again, ripple through sugar. Everything in the United States is all processed food. It needs a lot of what? Sugar. Again, it will make things more expensive here at home. And then in order to really do much of anything in Iran, we're going to have to put boots on the ground. That's the inevitable.
I think it's in our best interest to get out of the Middle East altogether, but because we have positioned ourselves as a global superpower, we have to do everything in our power to actually protect others.
Is America prepared for a lengthy conflict? There have been several in the country's history, and each, even those it won, have left major impacts and major scars.
I think America is ready, but I think what's been so frustrating for most people around the globe, and of course Americans, is the fact that we get into these conflicts and we don't have a clear objective. I think Donald Trump has a clear objective.
What is that?
I think the clear objective really is to weaken our biggest competitors. What's been going on for the past couple of months has been to weaken China.
Has he said that?
No, but here's the thing. What Donald Trump says sometimes and what he does
So
can be two different things.
You're
I
deducing. Sorry, just to clarify, are you deducing that from what he said, that you think it's about China, not Iran?
Absolutely. I think it's about China, because when you look at even, Venezuela, when you look at everything he's done as regards to going into different countries and doing these operations, it has negatively affected China.
But there are headlines at the moment on one news magazine quoting China, suggesting China says never interrupt your enemy when your enemy is making a mistake. In other words, China might be looking at the United States and thinking, you're making a mistake, we'll just say nothing whilst you make that mistake.
Well, China says a lot of things.
They do say a lot of things, but we always think that we're going to win. The last time the United States won a war was World War II. We never won Vietnam. We never won Korea. We never won Afghanistan or Iraq. We never won those. We just left.
I'd be keen to know from each of you how the war has affected the daily lives of you and your families, be it price rises, be it changing relationships. Mika, how has that war affected you and your family?
Honestly, it has not affected anything within my own family. And that's because we, as a young family, are very energy efficient. We have EV cars, but one thing, I guess, to Mia's point would be the fact that Americans can get in this self-absorbed front where we're expecting things on demand, and we're expecting things to be so smooth and so easy, instead of looking at how we can conserve and be more self-reliant instead of just depending on everything to be right there handy.
Nora, in Florida, how is the war affecting you and your family?
I mean, I have, a car that's gas efficient to Mika's point. However, you can't control having to order food or having to pay for food. And actually, produce is going to be more expensive now because that's the immediate, to the point many people don't know, but produce needs fertilizer, and fertilizer is from oil as well. So that affects it too. Also, if, you have a trip coming up, we're canceling any upcoming trips because we have concerns about the cost of flights. All of that is about to go up. If you didn't already buy that plane ticket in the next month or two, I believe that's going to affect it. So yeah, we're hunkering down, staying put. We had travel plans that we're canceling because we know that the cost is going to be hitting us and we need to have as much reserves and savings as possible.
What about you, Mia, in Boston?
So we are definitely starting to see it in the grocery stores, and we will continue to see it exponentially grow in the grocery stores. We are seeing it at the gas pumps. So I think a lot of people are very blasé about what's happening in the Middle East, but at the end of the day, it's going to make Americans' lives harder and more expensive. Americans are already still crippling under the weight of the COVID inflation because when bills rose during COVID, they never went back down. The price of food never really went back down. The prices of electricity never really went back down. And then now we're going to essentially add this Iranian war tax on top of that. So a lot of families are already strapped. I believe 80% of Americans are living check to check. This could have the potential to cripple a lot of Americans. And then over the last 14 months, the United States has lost 1.1 million jobs, the majority of them white collar, which is six-figure jobs. So again, America isn't doing as well as people like to perceive.
If I could just push back just 1 second, I think most of the hurt that Americans feel, it comes from a lot of the local policies. So I think you feel it locally or statewide versus federally.
I'm in a red place and we're feeling it. Gas, when we had this conversation 33 days ago, gas was $2.85. Now gas is $4.30 and I'm in a very red state.
Looking ahead, as the war continues, Americans will go to vote in November in congressional elections known as the midterms, which will decide who runs Congress and how much power President Trump would have after that midterms. Mia, in Boston, you voted Trump 2024. What would you do in the midterms?
I am not voting in the midterms.
Why is that?
Because I have come to the realization that my vote really doesn't matter at this point in time. It has always been a 1% versus the bottom. But so in the United States, it's a class war. It's the elites versus everybody else here. And I realized that no matter who we put in office, the outcome is exponentially always the same. So at this point in time, I will not be voting in the midterms. And I also understand by not voting in the midterms, it will be a vote cast in the Democratic direction.
And Nora, in Florida, you've voted different parties in different elections. How do you see the midterms?
I believe in a two-party system, which is what our country is founded on. And I also believe that we gave Trump, we gave the Republicans a chance, we gave them everything, we set it up nicely, and nothing has been given to us. We had a little bit of reprieve. I will say with inflation, some of it did go down before this, but now starting this war, all of that has been thrown out, and all the progress we made is down the drain. So it's time to send a message, and I will be using my vote to do that.
And so that's against Trump?
Against the Republican Party, correct, because I don't support what's going on right now.
And Mika, you've just heard two people who did vote Trump in 2024, one saying, Mia saying she wasn't going to vote, and Nora saying she's going to vote against the Republicans. Mm-hmm. Where do you stand?
I understand both sides, both of the ladies. However, I'm from a very blue state where all of our representatives are pretty much Democrat. And I understand that just voting Democrat is not going to get what we need. But the Republican Party haven't done us any favors, not done what they were supposed to be aligned with the president on. So I understand that puts the Republican Party in a negative light, but the long-term effects, I think, will be horrible if America puts the Democrats back in, because they have not been given any policies or any changes that they want to do. It's just been opposition to Donald Trump. It hasn't been anything of substance. So I think when people go in and they're mad about the war and they want to vote for something, they're going to vote with emotion and they're going to get some of the same that they experienced 4 years ago.
Trump voters Mika, Nora and Mia. Now, let's have a look at the sports news with my colleague John Bennett.
And the head of Italy's Football Federation has resigned today. That's after the country failed to qualify for the World Cup for a